It's troubling, it's alarming, it's concerning.
You're the guy who leads the songs up at St. Thomas More, yeah?
The diocese has their priorities backwards.
Groups that assist sexual abuse victims are outraged tonight that the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland allowed a convicted sex offender to help lead Mass. The advocacy groups question how this can happen in light of the Church's documented history with pedophile priests. News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh here now with this exclusive investigation. Jonathan, this Brooklyn man had tried to meet up with a boy.
Yeah, Rob, and that man, his name is Keith Kozak, who was convicted after a child predator sex sting at a local house, and yet he was permitted on the pulpit for months.
I will praise you, Lord.
News 5 investigators have found
This is the day the Lord has made.
44-year-old Keith Kozak from Brooklyn has been on the altar at St. Thomas More Church, leading the congregation in prayer and song.
I shall not die, but live.
I thought this had to be a mistake. There's no way. There just couldn't be any way.
Claudia Versalati from the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, or SNAP, says she doesn't have an issue with Kozak's right to worship, but it's been
Week after week, normalizing a convicted sex offender, normalizing him as a church leader.
In August of 2020, Kozak tried to engage in sexual activity with a boy, bringing with him sex tools, but it was actually an undercover cop. Kozak served nearly a year in prison and now has to register as a sex offender 2 times a year for 25 years.
They're not doing the minimum to keep children safe in the Cleveland Diocese.
Ann Barrett-Doyle from bishopaccountability.org and Claudia were just in Cleveland accusing Bishop Edward Malesic of not releasing a full list of sexual predator priests. Now, with revelations about Kozak leading songs at Sunday Mass as recently as May 5th,
He's done nothing to advance transparency in the Cleveland Diocese. And when you don't have full information, you have children at risk.
the diocese knew Kozak prior to his sex offender conviction.
The very next day I received a letter that said I was terminated.
Kozak used to work for them. In 2018, News 5 did a story when the diocese fired Kozak from his minister position after he liked a post about a same-sex marriage and posted pictures supporting another gay marriage.
Hello, Keith.
Yes.
We didn't have a phone number for Kozak, so we went to his home. We asked about the school attached to St. Thomas More.
Are you working with children at all?
No, not at all.
Not with the school or anything?
No. I played piano for one school mass, but I was at the piano and I didn't even go over where the kids are.
We asked if the pastor of the parish knew of his criminal background.
I sat down with him and we had a nice long talk, plus I filed paperwork with the diocese.
I mean, listen to what he's saying. They know, and it's okay.
Claudia was not impressed by his answers.
What I don't understand is why the bishop, who is in charge of the entire diocese, thinks that's okay.
Good afternoon, everyone.
The advocacy groups say the most disturbing video from St. Thomas More is from early April of this year.
The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will guard your soul.
That is Bishop Malesic leading the service, and Kozak walking up to the altar, then standing feet from the bishop while leading the songs.
The Lord will guard you from all evil.
It seems to represent the lack of effort and lack of serious intention that we see from this bishop.
You honor him as a sex offender by making him a church leader. It begs to question, what else is the bishop hiding?
Help is from the Lord who made heaven and earth.
After we started asking questions and asked Bishop Malesic for a sit-down interview, the diocese sent a statement instead, saying in part, there were substantial limitations placed on Mr. Kozak, but after learning he had been allowed to cantor and play the organ when the parish organist is unavailable, Mr. Kozak will no longer be permitted to serve as a parish volunteer in any capacity going forward. You can read the diocese's full statement on our News 5 app. And Rob, we also reached out and asked Kozak for a sit-down interview. He declined, saying that he's struggling a little bit and he didn't want to be in the, quote, spotlight.
Horrific crimes committed by Father Robert McWilliams.
The Cleveland Catholic Diocese says it vetted him, but he was just a master of deception. It missed no red flags. Victims' advocates outraged.
And hard work is standing up there and saying, we screwed up, and now we got to fix it.
Now new details emerge from the lead investigator speaking exclusively with News 5.
McWilliams was in a position where people trusted him.
Father Robert McWilliams from the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland, who committed child sex crimes from 2017 to 2019, was sentenced to life behind bars, then killed himself in a federal prison in 2022.
He left several victims and their families in his wake, while the Cleveland Diocese to this day keeps defending why it didn't stop McWilliams sooner. News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh joins us now with the new details that people haven't heard.
We do have those, and we want to make this clear as well. We have asked the leader of the Cleveland Diocese, Bishop Edward Malesic, for a sit-down interview several times. He has declined every time. The diocese has sent a statement saying how dedicated it is and has been to protecting children. There are questions, though, tonight, including what about a church-owned server found by investigators? What was on it? And what's been done since the Father McWilliams case came to light? We want to warn you, the details of this case are disturbing.
This story starts out innocently enough. Teenage boys doing what so many have done before. Going online to talk to and connect with girls. In this case, two different boys had conversations with the same girl that they both liked, and she seemed to like him back. As the conversations went on, though, the boys both made a fateful decision. They sent the girl naked pictures of themselves. It's in that moment,
Utilizing the vulnerableness of those kids.
lead investigator Richard Warner says the fun and flirting stopped. They made a bad connection. The girl started extorting each of the teens.
Turning it back on them, saying, hey, if you don't send me more nudes, I'm going to send these pictures to your family.
She even threatened to tell a boy's parents he was using marijuana. The boys didn't want to get in trouble. They were very worried.
It had gotten to the point where one of the boys was kind of suicidal and was really distraught.
The boys belonged to a church in the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland. A priest by the name of Father Robert McWilliams had gotten close to the boys.
He was coming to family dinners and family gatherings, and he was really part of these families.
But, as it turns out, the entire time, it was Father McWilliams posing as that girl online, even using the boys' confessions against them, all while the priest McWilliams offered the family assistance.
He was truly acting in the role of what a family would want their priest to do, is to help counsel their child.
Another twist? While McWilliams was in one of the victims' homes, he had excused himself, saying he needed to make a call. But in reality, he was sending anonymous texts to that boy's mother about her son's naked pictures, all so he could see their reaction in person. A third victim, a 14-year-old boy McWilliams met on the gay dating app Grindr. He got together with the teen several times, paid him for sexual acts. But Father McWilliams wanted more from the boy.
There was even conversation later on of, hey, if you can find me more friends of yours. Basically, he was offering a finder's fee.
Conrad Kircher represented victim number 3.
As he grew a little older and realized how he had been exploited and by whom he had been exploited, it obviously became very traumatic for him.
Investigators would eventually find McWilliams had thousands of pictures and videos of children being sexually abused, stored on his computer and other technology in McWilliams' office and living area at a Strongsville church. But Warner says that's not the only place they found the despicable porn.
It had synchronized to their server, so we had also located child pornography on on the server at St. Joseph.
Warner says he informed church leaders about the child pornography on their server.
We were able to tell them, hey, you need to clear this account, you need to get rid of this information because there is contraband here.
So you told the diocese to get rid of this stuff?
When I was at St. Joseph, yes.
What was their reaction to your suggestion?
They acknowledged it and said, okay.
So they knew that this folder existed at one time on their server?
Yes.
They had full knowledge of that?
Yes.
But here's the thing. When we asked the diocese if any of the church's computer equipment was used by McWilliams, they sent us an email saying, in part, based on all the evidence known to the diocese, McWilliams did not use any church-owned equipment to commit any of his crimes.
You would think in something as serious as this that information would be passed up to the appropriate channels.
And as part of another recent email, the diocese told us McWilliams was able to commit his vile acts because he was a master of deception, not because anyone failed to notice something they should have noticed.
It makes no sense.
But child victims advocates and watchdog groups ask, what about the child porn on the church-owned server? They say the diocese should have given News 5 a different answer.
We have not done our due diligence. We have failed the parishioners and the community at large in Cleveland and the parents and family members of every child on those graphic images.
This bishop and this diocese do not come clean to the Cleveland faithful because they feel they don't have to.
Warner handed us a screenshot showing just the titles of the content on that server. Even without the images, we can't show them on TV. They are obviously sexual, with one even referencing 14 and 16-year-olds.
How is that even possible?
Bishop Edward Malesic has been the Cleveland Diocese leader since September of 2020. Warner says after the death of McWilliams in 2022, the diocese was going to work with the McWilliams victims' families to help prevent these kinds of crimes in the future. However,
there was a process that we were working through, and I was asked if I would be on that, advisory or to provide any type of technical assistance. And unfortunately, nothing has happened since. I mean, it's kind of been stonewalled.
Warner says no progress on those efforts with the families in 2.5 years.
Once again, we see them operating callously and recklessly.
To the families that were betrayed by empty promises and empty words, keep pushing. Push publicly and continue to push the diocese at the highest level.
The Cleveland Diocese has told News 5 investigators Bishop Malesic cares deeply about the protection of children, and the diocese is unaware of any credible information that calls that commitment into question.
They are the ones that have to look in the mirror and believe what they're saying.
Before sitting down with us for this interview, Warner says he called the families of McWilliams' victims. He says they told him if something good can come from him stepping forward, he should do it.
That's the reason I'm here, is, the families are trying to do things to get the diocese to put things in place, and unfortunately, it's not moving as quickly as everybody had hoped.
One of the victims in this case sued the diocese. There was a settlement. There was no admission of guilt by the Catholic Church. The diocese tells us all web browsing content filters were in place during the time McWilliams was abusing children. However, guys, the lead investigator in this case says that filtering won't work if the predator is getting that child porn from other means, such as the dark web.
Jonathan, thank you for following through.
I will fulfill my vows before those who fear the Lord.
How could a convicted sex offender end up on a Cleveland Catholic Church's altar leading songs, standing right next to the bishop? It's a question that led to the removal of a local pastor and has victims' advocates raising concerns.
For 20 years, the bishops around the United States have promised better accountability, better oversight. Clearly, it doesn't work.
2 decades after the Boston Globe's Spotlight investigation that exposed a child sexual abuse crisis, tonight News 5 investigators take a new, in-depth look at the Cleveland Diocese and its leadership. In 2020, Cleveland's Bishop Edward Malesic came from the Greensburg Diocese in Pennsylvania that had just been hit with a child sex abuse lawsuit. News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh traveled to Pennsylvania to learn more.
Let's be clear right off the top here, Rob, that Bishop Malesic has not been accused of sexually abusing children, but he was named in the Greensburg lawsuit as the leader of the diocese, and then another suit later on based here in Cleveland. So here's what we're going to lay out for you tonight. There are accusations that the bishop and others have withheld information about child abuse committed by priests. The church denies it. You'll also hear what a federal judge has to say. Now, the victim in the Greensburg case is stepping forward for the very first time, exclusively with us. Parents, this might be a good time for you to take young children out of the room, because we want to warn you, the details are disturbing.
My teachers always called me a child full of love and abundance of affection.
This is the church John Doe attended as a young boy in Everson, Pennsylvania, a church in the Catholic Diocese of Greensburg.
I was a happy, optimistic young kid.
He says he and his family trusted his church community, but that would soon be shaken and shattered.
I was raped by the head of my family church repeatedly. By a Catholic priest.
In a federal lawsuit, John Doe said a priest named Joseph Stredzinski sexually abused him numerous times in several places, including Washington, D.C., in hotel rooms.
Different trips that I had gone on with the priest for youth functions, the pro-life movement in the District of Columbia.
Here's a timeline. John Doe says the abuse happened from 1991 to 1997. The lawsuit states during that time, John Doe reported the sexual abuse, or attempted to do so, to church and secular authorities on multiple occasions, leaving messages at the diocese office, reporting the abuse to a nun, but was told he must be mentally disturbed. And even the mayor of Everson at the time contacted a clergy member in the diocese about the priest in question. Records show the accused priest, Father Stredzinski, died in 2015, the same year Malesic became bishop in Greensburg. John Doe's lawsuit was filed in June of 2020. In the lawsuit, John Doe claimed Malesic was part of a conspiracy to conceal allegations of sexual assault and abuse from the public. Just a couple months later, in September of 2020, Malesic was sent to Cleveland.
Bishop Malesic never did anything to help me in my case. Never reached out to my attorney, never reached out to me.
Attorney Richard Serbin represents John Doe.
I actually hold the institutions more responsible than the predator. The predator can't help themselves. The institutions can.
Malesic was not the bishop during the time when John Doe says he was abused. However, the suit says as Malesic added names to Greensburg's list of credibly accused priests, he didn't give enough details. In 2018, the Pennsylvania grand jury found lots of documentations of concerns surrounding Father Stredzinski, including handwritten notes in his file. To this day, the Greensburg list only shows the name of Stredzinski and no details about the abuse. Doe's lawsuit states the diocese knew or reasonably should have known about the priest's sexual interest in children.
This was wrong, and maybe you weren't there when it happened, but the institution that you speak for was. And this was a crisis.
The suit also claimed the defendants conspired to conceal the improper and illegal activities taking place within the diocese.
Bishop Malesic didn't do anything to help me heal.
The Greensburg Diocese tried to get the case kicked out of court, but the federal judge wrote, Mr. Doe has sufficiently pled his claim of conspiracy, including against Bishop Malesic. So the case against Malesic could move forward.
The bishop's only concern is to protect the liabilities of the church.
There's what I call a conspiracy of silence.
As we were looking into this story, in August we got this letter from the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland, saying in part,
The bishop has never once concealed or conspired to conceal the sexual abuse of any person, and that under his direction, the diocese continues to educate, train, and background check thousands of employees and volunteers. But many question, what about the convicted sex offender and recent church volunteer, Keith Kozak?
I will praise you, Lord.
Kozak was able to volunteer to lead songs from the altar at a Cleveland Catholic church, including this year. He stood next to Bishop Malesic and even helped with children's services. A man that court records show tried to meet up with a young boy, but it was all part of a police sting.
Hello, Keith.
Yes.
As we reported just a couple months ago, Kozak told us the pastor of the church, Father Michael Feltz, knew his criminal background.
I sat down with him and we had a nice long talk, plus I filed paperwork with the diocese.
Filed paperwork with the diocese. However, parishioners and the parents of the church's school told News 5 investigators they never knew anything about Kozak's past until News 5 broke the story.
Tonight.
After our report, Bishop Malesic banned the sex offender from volunteering and forced Father Feltz to resign as pastor.
Release full details.
Victims' advocates have called into question the bishop's leadership.
He needs to put the same effort that he does with his fundraising into notifying parishioners and parents and the community at large.
The ultimate act of compassion by a bishop is to release information.
And as the leader of the diocese, there was another lawsuit naming Malesic, this time in Cleveland in 2022, after Father Robert McWilliams was convicted of sex crimes against several children. In an email, the diocese told us in part that McWilliams was a master of deception. Not even the best policies can guarantee that a person intent on committing evil will be stopped. And McWilliams was thoroughly vetted and screened. However, an attorney for one of the victims says the Catholic Church's efforts are not working.
They're just not doing enough.
The McWilliams lawsuit was settled. The lawsuit of John Doe versus the Greensburg Diocese and Bishop Malesic was settled too. Soon after, the judge in that case wrote, the pleadings are sufficient to establish a claim for conspiracy to commit fraud. That suit stated, after the abuse, John Doe has suffered serious and permanent physical and emotional injuries.
I was in pain that I haven't been able to recover from. I couldn't even step in front of a church or inside a church as an adult.
But he is determined to help other victims of abuse.
My voice is all I have, so I will continue to advocate for change.
The terms of the settlements in the Pennsylvania and Cleveland cases have not been disclosed. There is no admission of guilt. We have asked for a sit-down interview with the bishop several times. He has declined each time. You can read the letter that the Cleveland Diocese sent to our newsroom and statements the diocese in Greensburg and Cleveland have sent to us as well. Those are on news5cleveland.com. I'm News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh.
A local priest has been removed from public ministry. This after News 5 investigators started asking questions, and parents of a local Catholic school raised red flags about his past.
There has to be somebody safer. Why take the risk in this day and age?
The Cleveland Catholic Diocese says that the priest was investigated by law enforcement and church authorities for alleged conduct with an 18-year-old, and there have been published reports on that since the year 2002.
News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh has been following this story and the developments. And Jonathan, the priest got his job back in 2012.
Yeah, but now we've been getting calls from parents upset because they had no idea about this guy's past. Now, the priest hasn't been charged with a crime, so as a policy, we're not naming him. However, the diocese did take action recently after concerns came to light.
The Lyceum is a Catholic school in South Euclid for 7th through 12th graders. We saw students coming off a bus last month and going into the St. Elizabeth of Hungary Shrine in Cleveland. The kids have attended masses there on Tuesday mornings, where the priest in question was leading the services. Parents tell us he was saying masses and hearing private confessions of students for the better part of this year. The parents, who asked to remain anonymous, found published reports about the priest's past, and a parent called the diocese with concerns. News 5 investigators obtained an anonymous email sent by a parent warning other school families about the priest, asking in part, Did you know about the allegations against him? We simply want parents to be aware of the situation. Parents tell us they were never told by the Lyceum School or by the Catholic Diocese of Cleveland about the priest's past. That has critics of the church wondering why.
How do you protect kids? How do parents protect kids if they don't know?
Claudia Versolati is from the Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests, or SNAP.
You can't tell me there's not one more qualified cleric that could do a mass that didn't involve somebody who has a significant past.
Parents also tell us it didn't make sense. The priest in question was listed as awaiting assignment on the Cleveland Diocese website when, for months, he was saying Mass for their children at the St. Elizabeth of Hungary Shrine. And News 5 investigators found, at St. Elizabeth of Hungary, the priest had been participating in Masses numerous times this year.
In a position of power and authority, someone that the parishioners and young students would seemingly be looking up to for moral guidance and moral direction.
Ann Barrett Doyle from the watchdog group bishopaccountability.org questions the leadership of the Cleveland Diocese. Bishop Edward Malesic.
They're deceiving the public. The faithful of Cleveland deserve better, and the children and the youth deserve better from Bishop Malesic.
We asked for an on-camera interview with Bishop Malesic, but the diocese only sent a statement saying in part, the priest's alleged conduct related to an 18-year-old man has been publicly known and reported on by the media. He was not charged with any crime and no allegations of child sexual abuse. In 2012, it was required that the priest's faculties be restored. The headmaster of the Lyceum, Luke Masick, sent a statement as well, saying in part the administration has received no allegations or reports of misconduct against the priest, and the priest has occasionally been working with the school since 2012. However, with all of that being said, the diocese also wrote, going forward, the priest has agreed that he will no longer engage in any public ministry. We found he was then listed as having no assignment on the diocese website.
It was truly your news reporting that has brought this to the surface again.
The school's headmaster wrote me saying the priest is, quote, no longer able to celebrate Mass for the Lyceum community due to recent restrictions put in place by the Diocese of Cleveland. I'm News 5 investigator Jonathan Walsh.